First story. Dad breaks into our house and we make his life hell. I'd like to start off by saying that my dad is not a good person by any means of the word, and this is going to involve some serious trauma. Our family consists of Dad, the worst father of all time, my biological mom, my twin brother Ryan, and my older sister Kyan, my stepfather Dusty, and me. Way back when Kyan was born, Dad had already fallen off the wagon. The first thing he ever did was physically force Mom into doing drugs. To make sure she stayed with him following her birth, things only got worse. While Mom would do what she could, Dad was not happy about having a kid. He'd lock Kyan in her room for days at a time, because obviously you cannot make meth while hearing how hungry your child is. 2 years later, my mom was pregnant with Ryan and I. She immediately tried quitting the drugs and had some success, but having meth in our system, we were at serious risk. Ryan and I were born with huge complications, premature, barely breathing, and weakened immune system. After that came the worst few months for Mom to endure. While having one kid made Dad angry, having three made him fly completely off the handle. It was at this time Mom made the hard decision to call DCFS on herself. She knew we weren't safe and wanted a way for us to escape this situation. Mom willfully signed away her rights to us, and Dad of course wanted to fight. Both were arrested for child abuse and endangerment. Do not cook mess with kids in the house, as well of course as the drugs. It took 4 years and hundreds of letters for Mom to get into rehab. As this was happening, my siblings and I lived with our grandmother, who we grew up calling Mom. My grandma had no intention of fully adopting us, but she was left with little choice after a few years. It was either adopt us or we would be taken into DCFS care. Life was better for us mostly. There is a reason I never mentioned my adoptive father, and we were safe. After a few years in rehab, Mom was able to get back in touch with us. She was welcomed and I ended up crying because I found out my adoptive mom wasn't my real mom. We did get to leave kindergarten early the day she came home though. We grew as a family and it was good. After a few years of this, my adoptive father left the picture. Now everything is actually great. My grandmother passed away in 2017 and this was hard for everybody, but especially for Mom. She was devastated, losing the one person who believed she could become clean, a good person and a great mother. Now Dad gets out of prison and goes back every few years, and he usually tries to get in touch when he does. This year was different. We didn't have our grandma to make sure everything would stay safe, and Mom did not think she could handle seeing him. The mistake. The day comes to bury my grandmother. It was a particularly warm November day, and we are all having a hard time and don't deal with grief too well. I stayed with Mom the entire time while Ryan went to our other grandparents to help out. Kyan stayed in her room the whole time and we occasionally checked in on her. Night falls and we are looking through old pictures of Grandma. We were finally able to stop crying. That is until we hear some heavy banging on our door, followed by it swinging open and in walks Dad. He goes straight to Kyan's room and Mom is simply frozen. This is the first time I've ever seen her in this way. He eventually leaves on his own after some screaming and making Kyan cry. He ended up taking her money and then hitting her. Dusty has called the police already. We have a police scanner. Dusty has been outside the whole time, and as soon as Dad left, he went to confront him. Mom had to snap herself out of that frozen state and called Dusty inside. She didn't know if Dad was armed or anything and didn't want to take any chances. Dad goes across the street and pulls stuff out of his pocket as the cops pull up. He was dumping his past salts right in front of the cops. He ends up arrested and we get a restraining order. This is not the last we see of him though. Over the next few years we hatched a plan to make sure he regrets ever threatening our family again. The plan. The plan we managed to come up with was initially supposed to be petty and mildly inconvenient, but it ended up being so much more. We were just going to call the police every week or so on him. If he had something he wasn't supposed to have, back to jail. This didn't work out as planned and the turnout was much more severe. Dad gets out of prison and lives with his mom. Now the problem was this that we regularly go visit our grandparents, which means he'd either have to leave or we couldn't go. I'm going to call my other grandma Nana to keep things a bit more coherent. Nana would always make him leave if we came over, no matter what temperature, time or weather conditions. This would also apply to whenever we stay the night. We visited Nana so much after knowing what she'd do to see us. This was just her way of saying screw you to our dad. The thing about this meant he was essentially homeless, did not have a car and could barely find a job. When a job did hire him, he'd boast in or Nana would tell us and we'd give them a call and have them do a drug test. And he always failed the drug tests. So now he's essentially homeless, having the police called on him and on drugs. He gets tired of this pretty quickly and goes back to Nana's when we are there. A clear violation of the restraining order, so he gets fined. This isn't a meager amount of money either. This ruined his savings, so now he's also broke and got kicked out of Nana's. Now he starts to realize he's pretty screwed. We called the police for a suspicious man sleeping on the sidewalk and he had drugs on him. Back to jail. At least he has a bed, right? After a few times of this, he is finally broken. Devoid of all hope. He manages to get Nana to let him stay there again, so now we get more updates. This has been going on for months now, and we weren't going to stop. Job gone, home gone, money gone, drugs gone, hope gone. He actually started to be clean for a bit. Hard to get drugs if you can't buy them, and when you do, they immediately get confiscated. That is until he finds a new woman. He gets back on the drugs thanks to her money. So what do? Get her arrested while he's gone. We are being extra careful not to get him arrested anymore, since he'd end up in federal prison this time. After so many times getting caught with drugs, our state sends him to federal. And now we've taken away his girlfriend too. The effect. All of this has worn him down. He's gone. Anytime he'd regain even a tiny bit of hope, we'd snuff it out. He eventually injured himself with a gun that he's not supposed to have. So now we get to watch him suffer in the hospital while knowing he gets taken to prison as soon as he heals. We had to make things worse for him, and we couldn't let the times we didn't call the police go unnoticed after all. We hide some drug/ingredients in his dresser, easily noticeable when the police come to search. And he now has quite a while in federal prison. And believe me, no matter what you think, that person deserved all of this and more. Next story. I ruined my ex-boyfriend's life. So I ended up meeting a guy. He was nice and seemed genuine. We met on a dating site and met and hit it off, etc. So I basically ended up living with this guy and his two roommates. One roommate was a super chill nice guy and the other, the ultimate jerk. Like a really bad person. So a few months into relationship, I found out he cheated on me. The girl messaged me and was really lovely and I thanked her endlessly. I've been cheated on before, so I was more so just angry than anything else. So I basically did a Google search on him to see what sites he was on and what not. See if he was on any dating sites still. Why hadn't I done this sooner? I have no idea. I wish I did. Turns out he was a registered sex offender. He had been around my niece, she was 3 to 4 at the time. I felt dirty, I needed revenge. Turns out he had totally violated his register. He was living in student housing with first of all people who weren't students, nor did those people know of his situation. He worked in a bar and they didn't know either. Not sure if his university did. So I made a fake profile, messaged his roommates, sent screenshots and the works. I also sent an email to his university and workplace. Did not wait around long enough to see what happened there. Turns out he got a new girlfriend instantly. And so I sent her all the screenshots too. As you can imagine, that did not last. Revenge is good. It did. I knew these girls were underage because I recognized some of them and knew they dated when the girls were minors. I don't have any of the pictures or anything of that sort on my person, and I never have. I read through his documents and his court files, which he has to have on his person at all times. I also threatened legal action if he did not tell me what happened, which is how I know what I know, and then back this with the information I read via his documents. Next story. Claim a narrow strip of our property as your own? Fine, it's yours. Years ago when I lived at my mom's, I'd mow the yard every week. It was a hill too steep for a riding mower and a witch to mow with a push mower. It was rough, but I usually got it done. Our next door neighbor was a jerk. He didn't like us and we did not like him. Long story short, he was the kind of guy to call the police if me and my friends were hanging out on the porch, talking at a normal volume before 11 p.m., the city's noise ordinance time. Real prick. He got his hillside terraced, and the bricks he used jutted into our yard a few inches. When I mowed, I would just go straight down the hill from where the edge of his bricks were, and that was the edge of one side of the yard. The terraces did not go all the way down the hill, so about halfway down I'd clear the bricks and it would be open. Well, apparently one day he decided that the property line did matter, and he would flat out refuse to mow a strip adjacent to our yard. The 6 inches or so that the brick terraces covered made my edge line slightly off, but my reasoning was that if he considered it part of his yard, when he got the landscaping done, it was part of his yard when he wanted to mow, and he disagreed. And slowly a narrow strip of grass would grow, a green mohawk of pettiness dividing our yards. He was a meticulous gardener, often out on Sunday days tending to his garden, keeping his grass in pristine green condition. He cared very deeply about his yard, and therefore assumed that anyone else would care about their yard almost as much. But I didn't care about the yard or its appearance. I literally only mowed because my mom told me to. If the decision to mow was left up to me, it would have blossomed into a Costa Rican rainforest. With music blasting in my headphones, I'd mow right next to that yard hog every week. And it would have been absolutely no skin off my nose to move the mower over 6 inches and trim the hog. But I didn't, because that was extra work my lazy bum did not want to do. And also screw him. So for at least a solid 1.5 months one summer, he engaged me in a battle of wills, sometimes literally watching me go right past the yard hog, while refusing to mow it when he did his yard. One time I caught him staring and waved. He must have assumed that I had an iron will to refuse to bow to his silent demand that I mow that 6-inch wide. He must have assumed that I had an iron will to refuse to bow to his silent demand that I mow that 6-inch wide, 50-foot long stretch of grass, when my motivations lay entirely in the realm of apathy, laziness, and pettiness. And one day, one sweet day that I will always remember, I saw him using his full weight to body his mower over the now nearly 2-foot tall grass. The yard hog popped up a few more times, but it never got that tall again. I sure as hell never mowed it.